Go.
Hey everybody, my name is John Cole. And you've all been told that the zombie apocalypse will never be a reality, and most of you probably believe that. I'm here to tell you that you've been lulled into a false sense of security, and to go on thinking that you don't need to be prepared to deal with the undead is ill-advised. Your failure to acknowledge the possibility of a zombie apocalypse and your failure to prepare for it will get you killed and probably eaten. Let me throw some facts at you. May 16, 2011, Ali S. Khan, on behalf of the CDC, issues a public health statement saying that the general public needs to be ready for the zombie apocalypse. 1 year later, February 2012, there's an update and a re-release of this emergency preparedness statement, adding specific measures to be taken in the event of a zombie crisis. Now, of course, these statements were made under the guise that the zombie apocalypse would, being prepared for the zombie apocalypse would ensure that you were prepared for other major disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes. But let's not bury the lead here. A government agency issued not once, but twice, an emergency preparedness statement with the phrase zombie apocalypse. 4 months after the last issuance in February, Rudy Eugene made headlines with the 2012 Miami cannibal attack. After being shot in the chest, he lunged and growled at the police. It took the police shooting him 4 more times to stop him from eating the man that he was attacking. Since the statement that was issued 3 years ago by the CDC, there have been 14 other similar incidents of cannibalism around the world where the subject was reportedly out of his mind or non-responsive to verbal cues by authorities. And I can see some of you looking at me like I'm crazy. You're reassuring yourself right now and saying that this is all just circumstantial evidence. In my experience, I've found that when piled high enough, circumstantial evidence can become conclusive. So let's see how high we can pile this. Now, before I go on, I want to clear away any pretense here. I'm using the word zombie to describe a state of mind in which a person loses their sense of morality, compassion, and empathy. The creatures that you see wandering the streets following Z-Day will not be the reanimated corpses of the recently deceased. But I assure you that they will resemble the walking dead in every way that really matters. They will shamble around with an insatiable appetite for murder. They will not retain any shred of their former humanity. And when a horde of these zombies are scratching and growling at your front door, you'd better be prepared. Because they won't be bargained with. They won't be reasoned with. They don't feel pity or remorse or fear, and they absolutely will not stop until you are dead. Dicroclium dendriticum, Euhaplorchus californiensis, Toxoplasma gondii. These 3 things are not spells from Harry Potter. These are the names of 3 specific parasites that have what's called a complex life cycle. Parasites of this type mature in the bloodstream of an intermediate host, and then they reproduce in a primary host, usually in a nutrient-rich area like the digestive tract. Parasites, like the 3 I just mentioned, are able to affect the brain chemistry of their intermediate host and force it to act unnaturally and contrary to its instinct for self-preservation. Do you know what else displays this type of behavior? Zombies. So, the first parasite that I mentioned, D. dendriticum, evolved with the ability to make its host insect crawl to the tip of a blade of grass and wait to be eaten by a grazing animal. The second one, E. californiensis, will infect a fish and make it swim and splash around near the surface of the water, drawing attention to itself and making it easy prey for fish and birds. The third parasite that I mentioned, Toxoplasma gondii, is particularly interesting because its primary host is a cat and its intermediate host is a rat. Those are 2 mammals. The human brain and the rat brain are very similar. So similar, in fact, that we test most of our medications on rats. And when scientists are testing anti-anxiety drugs on rats, they'll hit them with a spritz of cat urine to make them crazy. Rats hate cat urine because rats learned long ago cats mark their territory with urine. And to avoid that territory means they get to pass their genes on to the next generation. And they don't get anything. Toxoplasma gondii suppresses a rat's natural instinct to shy away from the odor of cat urine. This brings the rat in closer proximity to its natural predator, where it can be eaten, and then the toxoplasma and the rat enter the feline's digestive tract, where Toxoplasma gondii can make little toxoplasma babies. So what does all this have to do with the zombie apocalypse? Dr. E. Fuller Torrey, the Associate Director for the Laboratory Research at Stanley Medical Research in Bethesda, Maryland, found that Toxoplasma gondii changes the rat's behavior by destroying specific types of brain cells called astrocytes. There's a disorder in humans that's characterized by a lack of astrocytes. It's called schizophrenia. Now here's where we get to chalk another tally mark in the zombie apocalypse might be possible column. A study published in July of 2011 by the National Institute of Health showed that people with a high level of toxoplasma antibodies were at a significant risk for changes to personality, car accidents, and suicide attempts. Another study published in November of last year by the Archive of General Psychiatry, after factoring out many variables and using an extremely large sample size, showed conclusively that patients with higher levels of T. gondii antibodies were more than 7 times more likely to attempt suicide and or develop schizophrenia. Now just to explain, in both of these studies, higher levels of antibodies indicates a higher number of parasites in the host. These parasites make their home in your muscle tissue and in brain tissue. So a higher level of parasites would indicate a higher level of parasites possibly in the brain. So if you're ready to not ever sleep again, about 1/3 of the population is infected with toxoplasma. Look at the 2 people closest to you. Statistically, one of you has this infection. And your chances are even greater if you own a cat. So there is a chance, now granted a very, very small chance, that the person you're looking at is the host to the parasite that will bring about the zombie apocalypse. And for those of you that are thinking, okay, it's a remote possibility, but it's a long shot, I'm going to give you just a little more food for thought. The last time I spoke to you, I told you about a government agency called DARPA that does a lot of research. And in 2007, it was found they were working on what was called a gay bomb. The press called it a gay bomb. The way DARPA characterized it was a non-lethal biological chemical weapon that would cause foreign troops to suddenly gain an increase in empathy and sympathy, making them less effective combatants. Is it that much of a stretch to think that they would push the needle in the other direction and introduce a parasite that could infect foreign combatants and make them crazy enough to kill themselves? A failed military experiment leading to the zombie apocalypse is literally the plot of at least 9 zombie movies. So now that I have your attention, let me get you started on your path to preparedness. Make a list of what you need and go get it now. It's a lot easier to get the stuff that you need when all you have to deal with is a line at the checkout and not a wave of the undead. Now, the checklist of things that you're going to need to survive depends on the amount of time that you want to survive without having to scavenge and or move to a new location. It's important to realize that humans are very resource intensive. You need around 1/2 gallon of water per day, and you have to consume about 2,500 calories just to sit around. And there are plenty of resources out there that'll get you started on what items you need and what you should have before Z-Day comes. I'm going to cover what I consider most often overlooked and forgotten elements in our new zombie land. Cut your hair or shave your head. And this is going to be no time for fashion. If one of those abominations gets a hold of your hair, you're just going to leave a good-looking corpse. So a follow-up to that is wear tight-fitting clothes. Just like your hair, you don't want anything else getting snagged while you're running away. Learn how to bump locks, jimmy doors, and defeat combination padlocks without resorting to bolt cutters or your boots. Banging on doors and smashing in windows is going to draw attention from a lot of people. Remember that there's not going to be a lot of this background noise when life comes to a screeching halt theater. Also, knock before entering. If there's a zombie on the other side of that door, you don't want to open up the door to an unholy surprise. And if the owner is on the other side, you don't want to walk into a face full of buckshot. Number 3, games and entertainment. It may seem odd at first that you want to have entertainment in a world that's literally falling apart around you. But with the world falling apart around you, you'll want something that offers a little escape. Nothing kills you faster than low morale. In the event that you have to hunt animals or catch fish, it's important to consume the entire animal. Not just the parts that you find at the meat department at Trader Joe's. Organ meats house a lot of the essential vitamins, and those aren't found in the choice cuts. Bonus for Jillian, no MSG. Don't eat anything that hasn't been cooked thoroughly. If you don't know how the disease is spreading, consider everything to be contaminated. Head north. Extreme heat kills more people than hypothermia on average annually. And there are fewer life-threatening organisms in the north. Less poisonous snakes, poisonous spiders, and this sort of thing. Stay away from stores, period. If you don't have it, plan on making it from the things you find on the side of the road. In desperate times, there's only one thing more dangerous than the walking dead, and that's the walking living. And most people will not be as prepared as you're going to be, or prepared at all. And the risk of encountering someone who will kill you for your supplies rises sharply as you approach a store. If you find chickens, take them with you. They feed themselves, they breed themselves, they provide 2 sources of food, they can outrun zombies, and they will also come home at night to roost. Always. Laxatives. Go ahead and laugh. But stress does weird things to the human body. And if you notice one day that you haven't tested the plumbing in a couple of days, I'm not going to be the one to check your roots. So, also exercise regularly. And don't be the slowest person in your group. You don't ever have to outrun a zombie horde. You just have to outrun one thing. Now, of course, there's always a chance that I'm wrong, the zombie apocalypse will never happen. But look at it this way. Preparing for the zombie apocalypse will cost you about 2 hours each month, and failing to prepare will cost you your life. Also, if you're prepared for the end of human civilization, then you're over-prepared for every natural disaster. But let's say that Z-Day comes and you didn't heed the writing on the wall. Let's take a look at a couple of scenarios that don't even involve dealing with a new human predator, and I think that you might not be prepared for it. We live an environmentally controlled lifestyle, and we don't consider living without air conditioning for more than a day or 2. But after 36 hours without air conditioning, the temperature outside becomes the temperature inside. Now, without electricity, your heating options are limited to an open flame. Most people don't deal with open flames in their home, and without proper makeup air, carbon monoxide poisoning becomes a very real issue. If you are not familiar with the term makeup air, you may not know how to safely operate a fireplace. It also means that your lack of preparation just killed you and everything else in your house. But it's a nice day outside. I won't need a fire. I'll just bundle up at night, and then I'll chillax during the day. No worries, right? I'm not going to ask you how you plan on cooking or sterilizing your eating utensils, but I will tell you now I'm not coming over for dinner. I mentioned a little bit earlier that heat kills more people than hypothermia on average annually. In the southeastern part of the United States, temperatures get in the high 90s and 100s during the summer. So let's say it's summertime, power's out, there's no running water. This means you have no way to cool off in that sauna that used to be your living room. A heat wave in 2006 brought temperatures of high 90s and 100s to Southern California, where people generally don't have air conditioning because it's a mild to moderate climate. That heat wave lasted just a few days and hospitalized 1,600 people and killed 650. Not knowing the dangers of excessive heat or techniques to maintain your core body temperature will put you at risk of brain damage or death. And failing to spot early signs of dehydration and heat exhaustion is probably going to kill you. Now, I want everyone to ask yourselves a question. Shove your ego aside and be 100% honest with yourself. If the power goes out right now and it doesn't come back on, how long could you survive with what's around you? Now help me put an end to the fallacy that the zombie apocalypse could never happen. Learn and practice skills that will keep you alive in a crisis, like how to build a fire, erect a shelter, how to effectively fish or hunt, how to collect and purify water, cook foods, cultivate a garden, fabricate simple tools, or administer basic first aid. Make a plan, be prepared, and let's secure humanity's future together.